Just for context, my boyfriend and I are homeless and we live in our car. There is a road that leads to a quiet beach on the bay near some train tracks, and there is only one road to exit. So not a lot of people come down this way, unless it's for beach access. People going to work in the industrial plants on the road, none of which were open, or going to an AA meeting. Again, none of which were open at the time, or if they are sleeping in their cars as well. Nothing in the area was open except maybe a couple of bars, and even those were a good 3 or 4 blocks away. Most of the stretch of road has 8-hour parking signs, so there are usually at least a few other people camped for the night, most of whom we have seen before, but tonight there wasn't as many. Just a few vehicles taking advantage of the overnight parking. We parked a little further up the road than we normally do, hoping to get a better internet connection. It was a little after 12:30 a.m. and we were relaxing watching YouTube with the dog, starting to get sleepy when we heard a car pull up behind us with their lights off. We cover our windows totally around so nobody can see in, but we can peek out if we move the blanket, and we can see headlights from cars passing or approaching. My boyfriend said it was a van. We didn't think much of it and kept trying to watch our show, annoyed with the spotty Wi-Fi connection. There were a few words exchanged on what sounded like was the other side of the street, not behind us where the van pulled up. It sounded like there were 3 or 4 people. A little bit later, the van drove off. Then we heard a knock on my side of the window, driver's side. We shut off the volume on the laptop and called out. Yeah? Silence. So we called out. Can we help you? But again, there was nothing. It was then that I realized that my door was unlocked, so I quickly locked it. After about 30 seconds of quietness, I pulled open the cover and nobody was there. Whatever. There are sometimes bums walking around. They could have thought we were someone else. It was silent for a while, then we could see in the light of the street lamp, through the crack on the sun reflector covering the front windscreen, the silhouette of somebody walking around the front of the car slowly. It was another solid minute after we saw the movement before we heard a quieter tapping on the passenger side window. This time my boyfriend pulled the cover down almost right away, and again we didn't see who it was. Right after this, there was a knock on my door again. It was right about then we realized that there was still more than one person around the car. There was no time for one person to get from the passenger side to my side between the second and third knock, and we had heard more than one voice prior. I started to think that maybe not everybody had gotten back inside from the van before it drove off. So after the third knock, I pulled my window covers down again almost all the way. I'm super annoyed and on edge by now. There was a skinny white male, probably in his mid-30s to early 40s, holding a flashlight and something else scooped awkwardly in the other hand. Almost like he was keeping it under his sweater, but we couldn't make it out. The windows were steamed up from us breathing inside with the windows shut tight, so it was really difficult to see out. He said, "Hey, I need a jump." Interesting, since there are no stores nearby. No reason to be down here at 1 a.m. We said, "Sorry, we're just about to take off. We're in a rush." He got frustrated and whined. "Come on, I've been down here for hours." Okay, if he had been down here for hours, why did he A, not ask us to help him out about 45 minutes prior when we pulled up, parked, let our dog out to eat, go potty, etc., and get our bed set up? Or B, attempt to start the car at any point. We never heard a motor rev up and an attempt to turn the engine or even the jingling of keys. Another creepy reason is why I could only see him. He said I need a jump. I have been down here for hours when I could clearly hear that there was more than one person around, but we couldn't see them. For one reason or another, they were standing out of view, not making themselves known. After this, he grumbled and went across the street to a white car with black rims that we had seen before, but not associated with him. I got this awful feeling in my gut, and even though all the windows were steamed up, I started the car and told my boyfriend to start wiping the windows so I could see, and I just started driving. We could feel that there was something sinister about the whole situation. For one reason or another, they were trying to get us to open a door or window. When that didn't work, they didn't respond because they didn't have a good reason made up yet, so after a couple of attempts to get us to open the door, they gave us the sob story, hoping we would get them out of the car so they could either steal the car while we were trying to help them or get to my boyfriend, either him directly or so they could get to me, or they were going to rob us for the laptop, which I am sure they could hear and see the glow of on the screen. The possibilities are unsettling and endless. Or maybe he was just a guy who happened to need a jump at 1 a.m. nowhere near any stores or houses, and I'm the jerk that left some poor guy down there on the side of the road, right? Well, we drove to McDonald's to eat something and parked in the back driveway of someone we knew so that we weren't right out in the open anymore. The lock on our trunk recently broke and is held together with only bungee cords, with most of our belongings inside, so it worries me that it could make us an easier target for thieves. The next morning, we were down there again and the white car with black rims was still there. Only now the back window was busted out, and the man was nowhere in sight. I think it was never his car to begin with. I think all of those people came in the van and one of them drove off so that the rest of them could rob someone outright or so they could break into the parked cars on the side of the street when no one was in them. It was really stressful and my boyfriend had been rattled for days. We are nervous to park in the same spot, so we are now looking to rent a residential driveway to park at night where we won't be so vulnerable. My boyfriend teased the dog for not barking, but I think it was very intuitive of him because if we needed to pretend we were inside, we would have been able to do so. Maybe it would have scared them right off. I like knowing he will wait and watch me to know what to do in stressful situations. I'm just so relieved that I was not down there by myself. Even the two of us together were pretty nervous, knowing that we were likely outnumbered, but if it were just a 120-pound female like myself in the car alone, I am worried they may have been a bit more aggressive about getting the door opened. Sometimes I think I watch too many murder investigation shows and conspiracy theory videos, and that may make me paranoid. Maybe it's the fact that my grandfather was a sex crimes and homicide detective for 30 years in the same area, and I grew up with him constantly warning me of the dangers that lurk in the dark and what can happen to a person. He taught me that real monsters are not boogeymen. They are just plain men. This happened about a year and a half ago. I was at work, night shift, a little past midnight and ordered DoorDash for myself and my supervisor since it was her birthday. I was happy to see I had the same driver as last time as I work in a small building among other identical buildings with a convoluted road system in between them all. It can be a little bit confusing for somebody not used to it. I had been watching the map and went outside once he was close by. I stood under a cluster of bright lights in our parking lot. Wearing neon yellow, you couldn't miss me. I immediately get a call from my driver asking me to come to him. I look around and don't see anyone until I walk a couple of yards to the center of the lot. He's sitting on the side of my building by the dumpster, where there is no light. He also has his lights off. I'm thinking, what the heck, dude? I start waving my arms and telling him I'm in front of the building. He's on the side. He hangs up and just chills there for a minute, I guess. At this point, I'm really annoyed because our food is getting cold, and this guy delivered to me in this exact same spot a week before. Finally, he turns his lights on and comes over to me. As soon as he pulls up, he's speaking another language into his phone, which then translates to English. Something like, "Hello, I am practicing English. I need new friends. Will you be my friend?" And then puts the phone towards me. I feel like I am speaking to a child because, hello, this is inappropriate, and I just say, "Oh, that's a cool app," and look at him waiting. He keeps speaking into the app about needing friends, and I tell him my supervisor is waiting for me and reach my hand out for the food. He tries to touch my hand and then asks for my number. At this point, the fact that he had tried to get me in the dark plus his persistence turned my growing annoyance into fear. I tell him I need the food and he asks me to get in his car in perfect English. At this moment, somebody in my sister's building comes out and makes their way over to the lot. He finally gives me my food and scurries off, which freaked me out. Why after all that would he speed off at the sight of another person? Clearly his intentions were not good. I reported all of this to DoorDash at the time as well as my local police and on social media, and it turns out he'd done this to somebody who lives 2 miles away from me. She had also ordered late at night, and he apparently asked her if she lived alone and if they could hang out while holding her food hostage. DoorDash assured me that they had deactivated him, but his boldness plus the fact that he seemed to only drive late at night makes me think that he does this a lot and has probably already assaulted someone. I was about 9 years old, so this was probably 1996, playing in my family's huge front yard. We lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside of city limits. A man drove up and pulled this car over on the side of the road. He got out and greeted me. He then told me that he was lost and asked me how to get to a specific city over an hour away. I knew the name of the city, but obviously not how to get there. I pointed the direction of the highway and said I thought that might be the right way. I vaguely remember telling him I didn't know and that he should ask an adult. To this, the man started making comments such as, "Oh, well, I'm sure you can help me. You look like a really smart girl." Then the man pulls out a map and sets it on the hood of his car, asks me if I can come show him on his map where the specific city was. As a child, it didn't even dawn on me that the stranger had a map and would be able to find the city himself. I just kept saying I didn't know how to get to the city he was asking about. He kept telling me I looked smart and emphasizing that he was lost and needed help. And because somebody nearby was mowing their lawn, it was hard to hear, so the man would say he couldn't hear me and ask me to come closer. I didn't move closer, but he did. My parents had planted hedges around our yard, but at the time the shrubs were pretty short. At this point, the man had moved from the front of his car and started crossing the hedge line, asking me to come closer so he could hear me. Now here's the part I wasn't aware of, and my mom filled me in on when I was older. She and my dad were inside the home. We have a bunch of windows facing the front yard, but also a bunch of trees between the house and yard, so my parents wouldn't necessarily see me. My mom said our dog Annie, a 3-year-old German Shepherd, Golden Retriever, and Boxer mix, was going apeshit. Annie was barking non-stop while running from the door and windows over to my parents over and over again. My parents were in the middle of something and just thought Annie probably had to pee. My mom went to let Annie outside, and my mom said the moment she opened the door, she flew off the porch. My mom swears Annie was hauling ass so fast that the dog didn't even touch the porch. Now back to the scene between me and the stranger. He was at the hedge line, maybe 12 feet across from me. I'm just standing there and suddenly Annie comes shooting across the yard and stops in front of me. She was the sweetest dog, and we have had her since she was a puppy. The runt of her litter, but still a good-sized gal considering her mix of breeds. Now here Annie was. She had a full-on mohawk from head to tail, standing straight up. She was baring her teeth, snarling and snapping towards the strange man. I remember looking at her and trying to get her to calm down. Still, this didn't stop the strange man. He slowly took a step forward into the yard. Annie seemed to be fully aware that this man had evil intentions because she never backed down. In fact, she kept me behind her and kept backing up, pushing me back. She was not going to let that man get past her. Still, the guy cautiously made a couple more steps. Around this time, my parents looked out the window to see where Annie went. Of course, they see the whole scene out in the yard and freak out. They ran out the door screaming. I just remember being so confused with everything going on. The strange man, the neighbor's loud mower, Annie looking crazy, and my parents running and screaming are all strange. When the strange man saw my parents coming, he ran back to his car and gunned it down the street. I vaguely remember seeing the stranger's map flying in the air as my dad threw me over his shoulder and ran back towards the house. So yeah, it seems like this dude was totally trying to abduct me and my dog saved my life. Like, it's crazy to think what could have happened. Annie was an incredibly good girl that we had till I was 17. In my previous posts, I talked about the man that tried to take my sister off our front lawn. To recap, a year and a half ago, my adopted mother called me one day to go pick my little sister after she got on the wrong bus. When I got there, I found a strange man talking to her. I scared him off, but over the next few months, weird things kept happening around our yard. Finally, one of Rosie's coats disappeared and was returned hours later, with all the tears and rips fixed. After what seemed like months of asking the police for help, they said if anything else happened, they'd come over right away. That brings us to barely 24 hours later. It was a Saturday night and Claire was supposed to go out with Diane for dinner, a movie, and maybe some dancing. I was supposed to go out with my own girlfriend, and a neighborhood kid was supposed to watch all 4 kids. Diane's 2 and Claire's 2. The girl was like 14 and her parents lived 2 doors down and would be home all night. All of us were really unsure about it, and after much deliberation, I insisted that I'd be the one to stay home, and my girlfriend would come over to help. Keep me company, shall we say. Fast forward a few hours later, the kids had just eaten dinner and the ladies were ready to go out. I was inside getting dinner ready for me and my girlfriend, and they just left as she came up our driveway. I thanked her for changing her plans, and she let herself in. Bit of backstory on my girlfriend Tara. She's 19, but very tall and very thin. When she gets dressed up, she can look late 20s and be absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. However, when she's dressed down in sweats and a tank top, that probably won't stay on through the night. She's lucky to pass for legal to drive. That's a small detail that becomes important. So, we had a good night hanging out around the kids. The boys, David and Sam, are absolutely nuts over her and have been trying to steal her from me since they first met Tara. They don't leave her lap throughout the whole movie, and the girls, Rosie and Kaylee, wouldn't leave mine. Everything went smoothly, even bedtime, and before long all four of us are fast asleep, leaving us to finally go downstairs to enjoy our date. We have a romantic candlelight dinner a few hours late, but that didn't matter. Put on a movie that neither one of us paid any attention to and fell asleep on each other. It's nearly midnight when I hear the screaming. Flinging myself off the couch and out from underneath a very startled Tara, I take the stairs by the twos and end up in Rosie's room where she and Kaylee are in the bottom bunk shrieking. Both girls practically jump into my arms, nearly hysterical, and neither one can make any sense until I see Rosie pointing out the window. I feel Tara behind me and pass my girls off to her before turning off the light and looking out the window. He's there, standing out there in our front yard, staring up into Rosie's room at the top bunk where she had just been sleeping. My heart stops and I duck down before he can see me, my voice practically hissing as I tell Tara to take the girls into David's room, lock the door and call the police. I make sure they're in there before I check the window again and they're gone. Nowhere to be seen. My heart starts racing at this point and I double check the door. As I hear Tara on the phone with the police, the sound of the front door jiggling breaks me from concentration. I move to the stairs and watch from the windows as he moves from the front door to the back, trying each point of access he can find before turning back to the front yard. At this point, I'm set off like crazy. Not only am I kind of anxious for myself, but I also have Rosie upstairs who's already been traumatized by this guy. 3 other kids who are now awake and scared, and my girlfriend. 5 people I do absolutely anything to protect. Seeing him continue to try to each window and door, I panic as I realize he can get into our garage again, and that's where we keep our sports equipment, like baseball bats and hockey sticks. Things that could be used to break open windows. When I hear the garage door start to open, I lose it. The next thing I remember is the police showing up and Tara pulling me off the guy before the cops take him to the ground. As they get him in the back of the squad car, he's screaming and cussing at me. Tara fills me in that after she heard the front door slam open and she ran downstairs after me, and found me having tried to drag the man to the ground, the 2 of us throwing punches as I was screaming for him to never come near my family again. When they finally get him under control and come to talk to me, they explain that the reason they got there so quickly was that they had been in the area checking in on things, when they found an abandoned car on the other side of the forest, directly across from where the forest ends beside our place. They found it suspicious and checked the car only to find kids' toys and pictures. When they got Tara's call, they knew the 2 were connected. When the 2 mothers got home, they revealed that the pictures they had found were of Rosie. Dozens of pictures on various days and in various places. The back seat was full of toys for a little girl and the trunk had clothes and blankets. When he finally confessed, he told the police that he'd been watching her for months before he even tried to take her off the lawn, that he was stopped by me, and that when he saw her mother go out and what he thought was a young teenage babysitter come over, my girlfriend Tara, he planned on breaking in to take her. He never really explained why, other than he wanted her, but he ended up getting charged with stalking a minor and misconduct. So the creepy guy that not only tried to take my little sister off the curb, but also stalked her for months and was going to break into our home to take her, doing who knows what to the babysitter and the other kids in order to do that. We've met more than I ever wanted to, and if I ever see you near her or the others again, I'll finish what my girlfriend stopped me from doing. Background. I immigrated to a small town, around 20,000 in the northeastern US, a little over a year ago from Australia. There are a handful of people of my nationality here, but we are pretty few and far between. I work in a job where I have a little bit of profile in the community. That's somewhat relevant. A few weeks ago at work, I saw this message in my Facebook other inbox, the one where messages from people I'm not friends with go. It's obviously from a dude in the area based on the limited information I can read on his profile, so I figured it was some random person who'd seen my work, found me on Facebook and wanted to drop me a line. It happens every now and then, so I wasn't terribly fazed. It read, "Hello, how are you? I've been to Australia 3 times for a total of 1.5 years. I lived in this city and here, and I went back in 93 and 2014. Please put in a friend request." I couldn't figure out how to do it from my end, as there was no option. "Hope to hear from you. Thanks, Phil." Later that night, I get home from work and I'm having dinner with my girlfriend who owns a bar I work weekends at. She starts dying laughing and says, "Oh shit, I forgot to tell you. And you're going to kill me." My first customer today wanders in, and already I can tell he's a bit weird. He asked for a beer and I give him one. And then he asked me what age ranges of women come in here. I tell him like 25 plus, he says. That's my age range. I'm 44 and keep rambling on to her. Somehow he gets to the topic of Australia and how he's been there a few times. She says, "Oh, my boyfriend is that nationality actually." And I cut her dead off with, "Wait, is his name Phil?" She falls about laughing and is like, "Yup." I yelled, "F me, man." Apparently, he spent a good hour showing off his knowledge of my country's slang terms and geographical tidbits before asking where I lived. No, where exactly does she live? Like what street? What my full name was, and whether I worked there. He told her that he loves people of my nationality and that he's a state-certified guide so he could take me out canoeing or hiking or whatever. Yeah, like I'm gonna frickin' do that in the woods with a strange dude who tracked me down over Facebook just because I'm from a country he loves. He goes back into the bar 2 nights later, a Friday night, and my girlfriend texts me saying that he asked her whether he got my full name right because he sent me a Facebook message and he never responded. He then proceeded to repeat his repertoire of my country's lingo and told a handful of off-color jokes, offending at least one female bar patron. He said that he would be back the following night to see me. A snowstorm that weekend meant I dodged the bullet that Saturday night, but the following weekend he walked in the door of the bar as I was seating a couple of customers. I give him a token. "How's it going?" And he launches straight into, "Are you the nationality guy?" "Shit. Well, I'm one of them," I said. He perches himself right on a bar stool in front of me, orders a beer, and proceeds to talk nonstop. Rattles off all the places he's been, countless random trivia facts about my country. Do you know how much total area the continent consists of? And stuff like that. And all of the places he wanted to visit. He wasn't just intense and creepy, he had absolutely no situational awareness. It was a busy Saturday night in a bar. I'm the only bartender and I'm running around the room serving people, but he wouldn't stop talking at me the entire time. Thankfully, the girl sitting next to him was also not from around here. Colombian, I think, and he got distracted talking to her about taking her out into the woods. Eventually, he asked for his check, pointedly showed me the tip line and asked me if it was enough. It wasn't, but please screw off anyway, and left. Although initially my girlfriend had thought it was funny and that he was bent on meeting me, she quickly became creeped out by his behavior too. I managed to avoid him for a week or two after that. Until one Friday afternoon when the girlfriend and I were having a quick lunch at the pub before I went into the office. We sat at a table next to the main bar, and who should cut his conversation with the bartender, whom we know, in mid-sentence, turn around and stride over. "Your friendly neighborhood creep. I've got something to show you," he said, as he rummaged in the pocket of his jeans before pulling out a large handful of loose change. My country's change. Yeah, I've seen Australia's currency before. Do you actually carry that around with you all the time?" "Well, I love Australia." Yeah, that much is evident. He again gave me this shtick about how he wants to visit this city and that city for the 3rd time I've heard it now, and again failed to recognize my half-turned away, ignoring him body language. Mercifully, the bartender came over to take our order, and Phil left to pay his tab. The bartender brought over a slip of paper Phil had written his information on, in case anybody was interested in going out in the woods for outdoor activities. It was like something they'd find in Ted Bundy's Personal Effects. The handwriting and general layout of this note made me immediately and genuinely question this guy's grip on reality. He leaves and I breathe an audible sigh of relief. We start talking to the bartender about our other weird interactions with the guy. And of course, who should return quietly, probably hearing everything in the process, because He left his coat on the coat rack. He showed up at the bar again later that night while I was at the office, and told my girlfriend that he's also a profession that involves being around children. Ugh, want to know the best day of my life? He asked her. He said he was asked to speak to an audience of students at an all-girls private school one time, when he was in Australia in his 30s. Afterwards, he said he slept with one of the seniors. Somehow I didn't ask for further details. I haven't seen him since, thankfully, but he cropped up elsewhere in what I hope is a small world. Small town coincidence. I had relayed this story to a coworker last Friday after she told me a similar story about being harassed by a weirdo that she talked to on a dating website. Today she says, I think the stalker outdoor guide who's following you around contacted me on a dating site. Sure enough, I look at his profile and it's him. No question. She takes a bunch of screenshots of what I can gather is his About Me section and texts them to me. They are the ramblings of a madman. I'd post the screenshots, but they'd probably give him away, and I don't want to bear the wrath. Every summer of my childhood, my whole family would travel to stay at my grandparents' home in a small town in Ohio. They didn't have a big house, so all 4 of us girls had to share a room, with me and my oldest cousin in one bed and my 2 middle cousins in the other. It was incredibly cramped, so we would try to stay outside as much as possible, attempting to find something to do. This particular summer, I was 9 and my cousins were 12, 13, and 16. It was the late 90s and we were bored out of our minds. So when the oldest said that she was taking a walk, we all begged to come along. I knew she was only taking a walk though so she could sneak out to smoke, but I didn't care. I just wanted out of the house. We'd usually walk for about a mile, go to McDonald's or a drugstore for snacks, then turn around and go home. It was evening and we were on our way back. I was getting bored, the novelty of leaving the house having worn off. The 2 middle girls were walking ahead, talking about boy bands, and the oldest was hanging behind, trying to hide the fact that she was smoking. Suddenly, I noticed a man with a dog about half a block behind us. I was so excited and hoped that he would get close enough that I could pet the dog. Sure enough, he starts getting closer. I didn't think the oldest was paying attention and the middle girls were way ahead, so I figured I could stay behind a bit and play with the dog. I start to walk toward the dog when my cousin grabs me and pulls me close. Don't, she whispers. He has a knife, just keep walking. I glanced behind us and sure enough, the man is holding a knife. He didn't say anything. He just kept following and staring at us. I had no idea that she was paying attention, let alone closely enough to notice the knife, but I'm glad she was. My cousin took me by the hand and hurried me home, trying to put as much space as possible between us and the man. We finally got home and ran inside. Thankfully, we never found out what he was going to use the knife for and we never saw him again. We also never walked after dark again. All of us are mothers now, and the idea of our kids being in this situation is terrifying. We try not to be helicopter moms, but we always try to have at least one of us with the kids and make sure the kids know the importance of being aware of their surroundings. There can be very scary people even in areas that feel safe. Oh, and my cousin quit smoking and got really into healthy living, so that's good too. I'm not sure if this is the right subreddit for this, but I for sure hope to never meet this POS again. This happened to me in high school when I was in 11th grade. I was 16 years old. The street I lived in was in New York City, and it was a pretty small street, so you could hear anything that happened at each end of it. You can hear kids laughing, kids falling from bikes, etc. This is an important detail for the story. Another important one is the house I lived in only had one front entrance to get into. The front entrance had 2 doors, a screen door, which was the first thing an outsider would see when they approached my house, and a wooden door. Both had locks, so nobody could just open the screen door unless they had a key. I note this due to all the videos I watched online of people just yanking screen doors open. I was living alone for a month, and it was pretty fun and mundane. My parents were living in California at the time due to work. One day, while I was on my computer doing something, there were these strong knocks on the screen's front door. I left my room and approached the front wooden door cautiously. I'm an easily anxious person, and it does not help that I keep watching crime documentary videos. The person on the other side knocked on my screen door again. I peered through the peephole of the wooden door and could see that this white middle-aged dude just standing there, moving his head side to side, and his body was doing those jumpy movements that people do when they are standing and waiting. I decided to open the wooden door a little bit, thinking the screen front door was going to protect me anyway, and asked him, "What's wrong?" The guy instantly responded, "There's been a car crash. Please come out here and help me. A kid that was riding his bike was run over." I asked, "Where is the car crash?" The guy responded, "Down the street over there." He pointed to one of the ends of the street. Remember how I said the street was small and I could hear anything? Even a kid falling from his bike, so I sure as heck could have been able to hear a freaking crash. The second he said that, my guard immediately went up, and while I was quite scared, I was also mad for some reason. "Call the police. I don't know why you're coming to me." The guy pushed on with what he was saying before and asked me to come out to see the car crash with him and to see if there's anything we could do to help. I remember saying, "Call 911 or I will. They'll be able to handle this much better than I can." I then closed the wooden door and locked it. If you're wondering, I didn't call the police. I just went to my room and watched YouTube videos. I know it's a weird thing to do, but I was trying to calm myself down because at that point my heart was beating so fast. I kept looking at the time. I forgot what specific time it was, but I remember it being in the afternoon. The sky was bright blue at least. I waited for a few hours when I was sure the guy would be gone. I went back to the front entrance and opened the wooden door, made sure nobody was there, and opened the screen door to see the car crash at the end of the street. Why did I do this? I wanted to truly make sure that there was no car crash. I know I said I would have heard it, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't ignoring an actual thing that I just happened to not hear. There was nothing there. No kid and no crashed car. Just the usual street end that I'm used to. At that time, I felt a sense of relief. It was only a few years later when I thought about this moment again and realized that God may have had some malicious intention for me. Good thing I kept myself level-headed and realized that there's no way there could have been a crash without me hearing. Who knows what the heck would have happened? I'm still relatively new to Reddit, so I don't really know too much about it. I am a fan of YouTube videos though. When I'm doing things around the house, I like to listen to readings on YouTube of Reddit stories, both hilarious and terrifying ones. One day, as I was cleaning, a video I was listening to finished and automatically played the next one, which was a stalker story reading. After hearing other people's encounters, I decided that maybe I'm ready to share one of mine too. I posted a story of mine earlier and I got a lot of positive reinforcement, so I think that I want to post another one. This is an encounter that went on over the span of maybe a month, then continued on from a distance for the next 2 years. This is a pretty long story, so I'm sorry if it gets boring. Growing up, I lived in a really small town. I don't mean footloose small. With a mere 14,000 people, I mean really small, with only 1,000 people when I moved here in the first grade. I didn't make any close friends all throughout my school days and wanted to get pretty far away. The farthest my parents would let me go for school, though, was a few states over to study Japanese at a private university in Ohio. My freshman year flew by. I met a ton of new people, and my Facebook exploded with friend requests from both domestic and international students alike. Not remembering everyone I met, I accepted them all. I was young and excited to make new friends. I ended up making a lot of good ones. I was actually kind of, dare I say it, popular. By my second year, the leader of my department had deemed me the big sister of the program. It was a small program, but I was usually the one that people would turn to for help. I was good at what I was studying and I was proud. There was a building on campus that was open 24 hours for students. It had couches, armchairs, and coffee tables on one half and tables and regular chairs on the other, separated by a big fireplace. There was also 2 little secluded loft areas for small groups that wanted a little more privacy. People would go there to study or even to just hang out with friends. There was a cafe attached to it, so it made it ideal for a study spot. Coffee plus students equal productiveness. Because I am a coffee fanatic, some might say coffee snob, I was always in the study building where I had access to coffee when I wasn't in class or catching those oh-so-rare hours to sleep. The only problem, well, if you can call it a problem, was that because I was the go-to person for the program, I would only sit down for a few minutes before somebody would come up and sit with me, be it to study or to chat. Usually the latter. When the end of sophomore year was rolling around, the dreaded exam time was approaching quickly. I was studying abroad my junior year and wanted to leave my school on a positive note. I was desperately trying to get some studying done, but people kept stopping to chat with me in the study building. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining like, oh wow, I'm so popular I can't even stand it. No, I loved my friends, but they couldn't really grasp the concept of silent studying. A few of them were already done with exams and just wanted to talk. I decided to try my luck in the library. Instead of heading to the story building, I went to the library and sat down at one of the little tables by a big window. I was on a roll. I had gotten through quite a few big projects and finished writing one of my presentations. I sat up a little straighter and stretched out my arms in front of me, letting out a satisfied sigh. A voice from behind me suddenly said, "Working hard?" The library wasn't a popular space to study. Everyone usually went to the study building or got some private rooms on the other side of the building, so the sudden voice behind me made me jump a bit. Yeah, I replied. He was a Chinese guy on the heavier side, a few inches taller than me. Sorry, do I know you? Now, I don't remember his name, so for this story, I'll just call him Chen. Yeah, we met at orientation. We are friends on Facebook, he said. His English was good, but sometimes his accent was hard to understand. He still didn't give me his name, but he looked at me so expectantly that I felt bad for not remembering him. Oh yeah, I blurted out. It's nice to see you. How are finals going? We talked a little bit about school and some other small talk. It was getting late though, so I excused myself to go back to my shared house for the evening. The next day, I avoided the study building again, hoping to get the same amount of studying done that I had the day before. I walked quietly into the hall, glancing around. I didn't see Chen, so I went to my table from the day before and sat down. It wasn't 15 minutes before he appeared though, sitting down next to me and trying to strike up a convo. I was a little bit annoyed, but I stayed polite. I excused myself after about an hour of awkward conversation with the stranger and gave up for the evening. It was still early, but I grabbed some friends and we went out for dinner at a local diner. The next day, I decided to try again. I went into the library and much to my dismay, I saw him sitting at my favorite table. At first I was annoyed, but then I thought, wait a second, he is here first, so I can just grab a different table and he won't notice. I walked to the other side of the room, passing rows and rows of bookshelves, and sat down at a corner table. If he found me, it would have to be because he was actively looking. About an hour later, I heard footsteps heading around the quiet room. Then a quickened pace headed straight for me. Hey. I groaned internally, but put on a polite smile. Hey there. He had brought his stuff and sat down across from me. After a painful half hour, I finally gave up and decided to head home. The next day, I decided to talk to the front desk about getting a private room. They were on a different floor, so surely I'd be safe there. Nope, he found me. After knocking repeatedly on the door and staring at me, I could no longer pretend that I didn't see him or hear him, even with my headphones on. If I waited much longer, I'm sure the other people in the area would be just as annoyed as I am, so I didn't want to ruin their study time. I opened the door. Oh hey, I was actually just getting ready to leave. I lied. So soon? I was hoping you could check my English paper. Ah man, way to make me feel guilty. Well, I could spare a few. Cool. He pushed his way in, sitting down at the table. Sighing, I sat back down and took his paper. As I started checking it, he started talking about how he had never shared a meal with a girl before because he thinks it's such an intimate thing. I was checking his paper as quickly as I could, trying to get away from the awkward encounter, so I let out the occasional, and head nod, barely listening. Suddenly, he starts pulling food out of his bag from a nearby Chinese restaurant and hands me a fork. I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what? He just said he thinks sharing food with a girl is intimate. Luckily, I was able to form words. Your paper looks good. I don't see any real English mistakes. I can't stay though. I have plans to eat dinner with some friends. Sorry. I passed him his paper, stood up and left, slightly creeped out. I would have blamed it on cultural differences, but I knew a ton of other Chinese kids on campus and none of them were as weird as Chen. In fact, I was close to a lot of the other Chinese kids because they were so cool. But Chen was giving off some really scary vibes and I didn't want to see him again. The next day, I decided it would be better to just study at the study building. I'd rather be surrounded by chatterbox friends than alone with a creepy stranger. The loft was open when I arrived. You have to climb stairs to get to it, and you can't really tell if anyone was up there, let alone who, unless you are really trying to look up through the cracks or go halfway up the stairs. Practically giddy with joy, I rush up the stairs and settle into the armchair with a cup of coffee from the cafe. The giddiness of finding the loft open quickly wore off though, as I went into the productive mode. I got a lot of studying done, but after about 2 hours, movement downstairs caught my eye. Chen was walking around, looking around the open floor. I took a deep, quiet breath and tried to push the paranoia down. No big deal, right? Maybe he was just tired of the library and wanted to study in this building for a change, for the first time in 2 years. Then I heard it. Those awful words. He was asking a group of people I knew if they'd seen me, asking about me by name. Luckily, they arrived after me and didn't see me go up into the loft. I was safe. He looked around a little bit more and finally left. The next day, I promised a Japanese friend of mine that I'd help him with his paper. My friend was a 6.5 foot tall, ripped like a quarterback phenomenon of a man named Tetsuo. We agreed to meet in the loft at a set time, and I arrived a bit early to make sure that we could actually get the loft since they were a bit popular. I was sitting in the armchair when I heard him start coming up the stairs. He was 15 minutes early. How very Japanese, I thought jokingly. My heart dropped when I looked up, though. Not Tetsuo. Chen. He silently stalked over to the sofa, dropped his things, and sat on the coffee table in front of me. He put a hand on each of the arms of the chair, locking me in, and proceeded to forcefully kiss me. He was bigger than me in both height and weight, so it took a lot to push him off me. I'm sure that the rush of adrenaline helped. "What are you doing?" I shrieked. "I'm in love with you. I want to be with you, and I want you to marry me and move back to China with me and start a family with me." He started to lean in again. I leaned back and tried to push him away. "Get away from me." He leaned back a little, but kept his hands on the arms of the chair and his knees on either side of mine, locking me in so I couldn't get away. "What's wrong?" What's wrong? Did he really just ask me that? Was he stupid as well as crazy? "You." "No. Just no. Get away from me." I tried to wiggle free, but he was stronger than me. "I don't even know you." "But I know you," he said. "I need you and I love you." I was about to scream for help when Tetsuo came pounding up the stairs in a rush. Chen may have been bigger than me, but Tetsuo was way bigger than Chen. He looked right at me, asking me in Japanese, "Are you okay?" I replied in Japanese, saying, "Help me." He started walking towards us, and Chen immediately leant back and let me go. Tetsuo took my hand, pulling me to sit on the sofa right next to him, saying in English, "You promised to help me with my English paper." I was shaking, but I felt significantly safer with Tetsuo there to help me. He could easily take down Chen if it came to that. Chen didn't leave. He sat in the armchair I had just vacated and waited. Did he think that Tetsuo would just leave and he could continue to harass me? We finished Tetsuo's paper in about an hour. I took my time explaining certain grammar points and spelling patterns, hoping that we could take long enough and Chen would give up and go away. But he didn't. Tetsuo got up and stood between my stalker and me. "Let's get some dinner." He picked up my stuff, took my hand, and pulled me down the stairs without a second glance at Chen. We didn't get dinner. For obvious reasons, I didn't have an appetite. Tetsuo did walk me home though, and I told him all about Chen. He said that until finals were over and until I left the university to go home for the summer, he would act as my bodyguard. He said he would take me to all my classes and stay with me outside of class. He was true to his word, but Chen always was within view. The day of my last exam and the day I was leaving, I met with Tetsuo in the study building. We looked around and didn't see Chen. With that, I said I was going to buy a coffee from the cafe. Upon entering the cafe, I rushed to the counter and ordered my usual, a medium black coffee. My blood turned to ice as a voice behind me said, "Make it a large one on me." Chen. He was always hidden in the cafe, knowing that I would be going there for my coffee like always. "Nah," I told the woman behind the counter. "My usual medium, please. I'll be paying for it myself, too." "Let me," he insisted. There was a little bit of back and forth between us. Thinking that we were a couple or something, the woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Just let the guy get you a cup of coffee." I begrudgingly agreed and rushed away as soon as it was in my hand. He was still paying. He caught up to me before I could reach Tetsuo, though. So close. There was a pillar in the way, though, so Tetsuo couldn't see me. Every time I tried to move, Chen stepped into my path and stopped me. He began begging again. Marriage, family, China. No, no, and no. Tetsuo realized I was taking too long and came to rescue me, telling Chen to stay away from me. As we were walking away, Chen said, "I won't give up. Not ever. Not even if you marry someone else." I took my last exam and moved back to Illinois that evening. I did find Chen on my Facebook and blocked him. It wasn't hard to locate him after he started liking all my photos. I studied abroad in Japan for a year and had to go back for my uni for senior year. I had a boyfriend then who is now my husband. A friend and I rented a house just off campus, but the internet wasn't going to be set up for another few days, so I went to use the free Wi-Fi at the study building. While I was talking to my boyfriend, who was still in Japan, Chen appeared in front of me. He immediately began trying to talk to me, then noticed I was talking on the phone and decided to stand there silently staring and waiting. My blood went cold again and I began to panic, telling my boyfriend in Japanese what was happening. I told him about Chen while we were in Japan. He told me to run away or to find somebody nearby to help. Instead, the anger in me began to rise. I wasn't some pitiful little girl that needed help whenever something happened. When I was in Japan, I had experiences that demanded I stand up for myself, and this time wasn't any different. I looked at him and said, "I'm talking to my boyfriend, please leave me alone." He stood there staring at me for what felt like hours, though I'm sure it was only a few moments. After narrowing his eyes and glaring at my phone, he walked away. I managed to avoid him for most of the year, but I always saw him lurking nearby, staring. Because I was almost always surrounded by friends, though, he never dared to come near and beg for marriage again. He tried to approach me more than once when I was alone, but I made it clear to him that I would scream if he touched me. I kept to public places and made sure to never ever be in an empty place. I think it helped that Tetsu was usually by my side too. I live in Japan now with my husband. It's been 3 years since I graduated and I haven't seen or heard from Chen since. I have lived in New York City all of my life, but this ranks as one of my oddest encounters. I probably owe my life to somebody I only met briefly. It was about 30 years ago and I was coming out of my dentist's, who was located on a desolate side street between Penn Station and 7th Avenue, not far from Macy's Herald Square. At about 6:30 p.m., my dental work finished and the sun was just starting to set. I walked out of the appointment only to run into a man who repeatedly intentionally body slammed me while pretending it was an accident. I had formed an intention to say nothing, but to slowly edge my way closer and closer to the open door of the chock full of nuts and make a quick dash for the entrance. Again and again the man said, "Excuse me, miss," and slammed into me from the street side as I tried to pick my way across the sidewalk to the open door. He must have stepped back and hit me 6 or 8 times when, out of nowhere, a large man stepped forward and said, "Miss, where are you going?" Terrified that they were a tag team, I said, "I'm trying to make my way to the 6th Avenue subway entry at Macy's." This mysterious guy grabbed me and propelled me so quickly the couple of blocks to the subway that my feet didn't touch the ground, even though I was a young woman of large size and a former distance runner who would move with great speed. The mysterious man took me right to the train, then disappeared. My dad said he was probably a plainclothes cop. I never knew who he was or what the other guy was trying to pull, but I will always be grateful for having been saved from something quite potentially bad. I've been lurking on this page for the last 2 years, but I've always been too scared to tell my story. Funnily enough, I stumbled across this thread by complete accident just after my encounter, while looking for a way to rationalize or come to terms with myself over what happened. I've had some creepy encounters in my time, but I've never had something as full-blown as this. This experience single-handedly put my life on hold and gave me a whole range of stress and anxiety. Throwaway account to protect my own identity, as well as being a first-time poster. This happened approximately 2 years ago. I was around 18 and I had been moving houses quite a lot before I finally moved into my current house and also the house these events take place in. I was working at some shitty commission-only job in the city while living in the area of my city known to be extremely rough around the edges and for its high crime rates. A few people in my town drive beautiful sports cars, despite living in crappy houses, and I fell in love with the gold one that I was constantly seeing around the streets. I can't exactly pinpoint exactly where it started, but one day I was leaving my town shopping center, probably picking up pet food or munchies. Sounds about right, to be honest, when I picked up on a car driving erratically behind me, swerving through multiple lanes of traffic to keep up with me and trying to get my attention. The car was full of men aged 20 to 30, and once they realized I had seen them, they were ecstatic. I passed it off as boys being boys and just some odd catcall, and I turned into a side street so as not to lure them to my house. I was new to the area and didn't realize I turned into a dead-end street that linked back around to the road I was on, and to my annoyance, these guys followed. Not wanting to delay getting home, I decided to just speed like a maniac to my street, pull a U-turn in the side street next to my house, small cars for the win, quickly pull into my driveway, and park the car behind my house and out of view from the street. Satisfied, I took my keys out of the car and walked around to the front door. I remember being a naive idiot smirking to myself while noticing this car full of guys hadn't made the U-turn in time and were now driving slowly up and down my street looking for me. I felt like a complete badass and went inside. But here's where the creepiness begins. It was about a month or two after that encounter, and to get to work and avoid traffic, I was catching the train to the city, which was right near my house. One day in the afternoon while coming home from work, there was a semi-trailer driving down the road. Something not uncommon, as my street was off a major road between two towns, and we were constantly upgrading the road. The driver of the truck half leaned out the window and started catcalling me. I, being young, just decided to smile at this guy instead, hoping he'd just have a laugh and keep driving. Well, I was wrong. The guy instead turns off his truck and starts running towards me on the street. I had huge headphones in and didn't notice until he tapped me on the shoulder and offered me a cold energy drink. It was the middle of summer and still light outside on the main road. Thinking this guy posed no major threat, I accepted this drink and made small talk. For the life of me, I can't remember if I accidentally slipped up and revealed minor things that could reveal where I lived or even my name. I remember he kept bugging me for a phone number, so I finally just gave up and gave him my actual number, but with a digit changed on the end. This always worked in the past, and I just wanted to go home and chill out. The guy eventually hopped back in his truck and drove off. I remember smiling, thinking how awesome it was that I got a free drink, and then I got a little paranoid thinking that he bugged the can with a tracking device or something. I laughed it off, thinking of how stupid that was, posted the drink on my public Instagram, and went on with my day. A few weeks later, and there were some tradespeople working on my street. They'd occasionally catcall and come up with stupid one-liners that I'd post on my Facebook, laughing with my friends about how forward and amusing they were. I don't know if they were related, but after my experience, anything is possible. I was smoking up quite regularly around this point, and I started to feel paranoid in my home. At first, I brushed it off as a minor side effect of the weed. However, I couldn't quite shake the feeling of being watched. I started to receive phone calls from private numbers that wouldn't say anything on the other end. I joked with my friends about a stalker I had leaving cartons of beer on my driveway and switching the sensor lights on in the backyard near my bedroom window. I had a sensor light on my front porch stop working all of a sudden, and I assumed it had just blown out. I felt completely on edge, like I was being watched through the windows. I'd hear footsteps on my front porch when I was in the living room, and at night I would keep waking up for no reason. I'm a heavy sleeper, so it struck me as odd. I spammed calls to my local police station for weeks, telling them I thought somebody was in my backyard or on my front doorstep. However, by the time they would drive out, they'd take a look around the place, find nothing, see my red eyes, and just assume that I was another paranoid user. Eventually, my cat started acting strange. She started hissing and jumping at my bedroom window, running around the house and howling. I thought she was just seeing a neighborhood cat in the window and banging her tail on the thin glass, making it sound like knocking. Whenever I locked her out of my bedroom to get some sleep, she'd start wailing and panicking, clawing at my door to be let back in, only to once again slam into the window and keep up with her odd behavior. This started happening every night. One day I came home and my mom was livid. She handed me a note that was left on the front door, blamed my ex-boyfriend. He was an abusive POS and demanded I hand it in and go to the police in person. I took the note to the police. I think it said something like "found you, thought you could hide," or something along those lines, so all signs pointed to my ex. I calmly gave the police my ex's number in the note, and we all laughed about it, and they promised it would stop. It didn't. My friends started to grow concerned, and I told a few of them that I believed it was my ex. A few of my male friends, bless them, made a game out of waiting for my ex to come back to my house so they could take matters into their own hands. They would drive by a few nights to make sure I was okay, and I started sleeping with the lights on. One night, it was 1 a.m. I was awoken up by my cat howling and my phone ringing off the hook. "Get out of your house now. It's not your ex." It was one of my friends. I panicked, grabbed my cat, packed a bag, and sped to my friend's house. That night, everything fell into place. My friends had noticed a man lightly tapping on my window and staring at me around 12:30. The man noticed he was being washed and quickly peeled off in his gold sports car. While I drove to another friend's house to be consoled, my other friends followed this man half across the city, trying to confront him. Eventually, he turned into a block of apartments and ran inside. Spooked out and deciding they didn't have enough manpower or intimidation, they decided to call it a night, call the cops, and come back later to suss the guy out. The next day, the police turned up at the house, did a small look around, and left, claiming that there was no evidence and nothing they could do. A few days later, my friends, not accepting this for an answer, decided to come back to the apartment and start looking around. They asked a few neighbors for a guy matching their description, and while they did know the man, he wasn't very sociable and his car had apparently not been around for a few days. A week later, I received a box of items on my front doorstep and my heart sank. There were photos, dozens of them of me at work, in my house, sleeping, catching the train. Photos of my friends, photos that I didn't even know how they were taken. A small book containing Tumblr, YouTube, and Instagram addresses, my hobbies, where I worked, etc. The most concerning of all was the light bulb to my front porch and some underwear that had gone missing from my clothesline, all neatly piled together in this box. And then it just stopped after that. I never received anything else, and my friends watched my house for a few weeks and saw nothing. The scariest thing is I can never put a face to a name, and I constantly live on the edge of whether or not this will happen again. Sometimes I have sleepless nights, like tonight where I stay awake listening out for a tap at the window or footsteps on the driveway, but nothing ever happens. I met my boyfriend a month after this happened, and even he can't believe me sometimes and calls me paranoid. It's a horrible feeling to feel unsafe in your own home, but it's an even worse feeling to question your own sanity and never know how this all started. I am getting better slowly, but I will admit I'll probably never be the same openly cheerful person I was before. I browse this sub every night before bed, reading all of your encounters, and I'd also like to thank you all for making me feel somewhat included and secure in the community. Even though I don't post often, I always fall asleep feeling less alienated from the world in some horrible, twisted way.